The question is that the bill now be read a second time, and I give the call to the honourable member for Hinkler.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Speaker. What an appalling attack on democracy. An appalling attack on democracy. An automatic gag at 10 o'clock. There are 151 members in this House who have just been gagged by the Labor government. Gagged. This is outrageous. This is Australia's democratic right. We are elected to come here to speak.
Order.
Now, Mr Speaker, I will go on to the bill, but this is an outrage, an absolute outrage. We have
the Minister for Resources
four cashless
is
debit card
interjecting,
sites,
not from
Mr
her
Speaker,
seat.
around the country. And in my electorate of Hinkler, it is the biggest site in the country. There were some 6,552 individuals as of the 1st of July 2022, and it's making a difference. It is making a big difference. Mr Speaker, my site is significantly different to the other three. We do not have a majority of Indigenous or Aboriginal descent in my patch. It is only on 4 payments: New Start, Youth Allowance Other, Parenting Payment Single and Parenting Payment Partnered. That is all. Now, it has worked, and that has been demonstrated by the evidence. But what we've seen tonight, Mr Speaker, is a move to urgency because they want to meet their own deadline. It has been in place for years. The cashless debit card has been in the trial sites for years, operating successfully. Another 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks will make no substantial difference, apart from the fact that it affects the agenda of those opposite. So, Mr Speaker, firstly, can I thank those individuals who are willing to go out and support the cashless debit card locally. The former member for Bundaberg, David Batt, the former member for Burnett, Stephen Bennett, of course the now retired member for Hervey Bay, Ted Sorensen. Our 2 mayors, one mayor was opposed, and I understand that. The Mayor of Fraser Coast, George Seymour, was ideologically opposed. He's also opposed to pokies. I thought this was actually a pretty good solution. But look, I've always respected George. He's been consistent. And Mr Speaker, the Bundaberg Mayor, Jack Dempsey, gave an absolutely fantastic letter of support, and I'd seek leave to table this letter, Mr Deputy Speaker. Mr Deputy Speaker, I seek leave to table a document.
Leave is not granted.
It's not granted. Well, very well, Mr Deputy Speaker. Well, thank you so much. I mean, this is correspondence between the Bundaberg Mayor and myself providing support for the cashless debit card. And now we can't even allow a tabling of this document in the parliament. Mr Speaker, I mean, if it was any more ridiculous, it would be funny. But let's come back to the cashless debit card once again. It is an 80%, 20% split. It is a debit card which can be used on any EFTPOS machine, except to buy alcohol, except to buy gambling products. It works. Mr Deputy Speaker, the concept being put forward by those opposite is that these 6,552 participants in my electorate can't pay their rent, can't buy things, can't get their kids to school. I would have a queue outside my office I couldn't see the end of if that was the case. It is just complete nonsense. Now, on a more serious note, Mr Deputy Speaker, these are all very serious discussions. I want to read out a statistic, and I think everyone in the House should hear this and be ashamed, absolutely ashamed. When the electorate was announced as the 4th region for the cashless debit card, of those individuals who were under 30 and on welfare, 90% had a parent who was also on welfare during the past 15 years, the majority of whom were on welfare for at least 9 of the last 15 years. And without any intervention, it is projected that 57% of those under 30 on welfare would still be on income support in 10 years' time. That is appalling. It is absolutely appalling. This is the youth of our nation who are finding themselves in difficult circumstances and unable to get out of them. Surely our job as politicians, as MPs, as representatives, is to do things that make a difference. Now, these are tough decisions. I've always acknowledged that. And what do we see from those opposite? They just continue to remain silent on what they'll do afterwards because the answer is nothing. They will take away what works and they will do nothing. And not only that, we cannot get a commitment from the minister on the $30 million of support that is going into the 4 trial sites to make sure we can provide more assistance. And this is on top of what was already provided. So I say once again to the minister, I'm sure the minister's staff are watching, Just give us a commitment to maintain this money, because it makes a difference. It helps kids get into work, it helps them get a job, it helps them pay their own way. $30 million is not that much. It's in the budget. Please do not cut it, because we need it. Mr Deputy Speaker, I'll repeat what I said in a speech to Parliament in May 2017. Change is difficult, change will be hard, change will be controversial, but change is absolutely necessary. It is absolutely worth the attempt. We have an opportunity with the cashless debit card to make change for our community, and that is why our community elects us. For 2 elections in a row, Mr Deputy Speaker, this has been front and centre of the Labor campaign, and we have continued to have support from the people of Hinkler, because they know we are trying to make a difference and make change. There is no silver bullet in this area. There simply is not. But this is a tool in the toolbox that actually works, and that is backed up by the ANAO report. And I'll go to this table, Mr Deputy Speaker, table 3.4, where it says the performance measures for the cashless debit card. The first one, the extent to which the CDC supports a reduction in social harm in communities. All of it fully and or mostly meets requirements for data, verifiable data, free from bias, how it was measured and everything else that's related. All of them. On the second measure, 2 out of the 4 are met. And the ANAO report was scathing of the department, because the department did not do what the minister asked or the minister expected in terms of gathering the data that was necessary. Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, I'll acknowledge it's been incredibly difficult, particularly in Queensland, to get data. The Queensland Labor government simply won't participate. They'll not provide data around crime that's direct, health services, education. But what I can tell you is every single school teacher I've spoken to has been supportive. In fact, a school principal who I'll not name went to the community reference group for the cashless debit card and said after its introduction their breakfast club halved. It halved. And the number of kids doing extracurricular activities almost doubled. Now, if that is not a good outcome, well, I don't know what we're doing here. I really don't. I mean, these are kids who find themselves in really tough positions. They have parents who are welfare dependent and, in a lot of cases, multi-generational welfare dependent. These are tough issues to deal with. They require tough policies to get an outcome, and this was a tough policy, but it was the right policy. Right across the trial sites, it has been absolutely successful. Mr Deputy Speaker, you don't have to listen to me. I'll read a couple of quotes, given the shortage of time that we now have, from constituents. I would like to express my continued support for the cashless card. Being a taxpaying professional, I like to see our tax dollars supporting health, road security, pensioners and disabled, but being 30-year-olds myself, I believe able-bodied young people should be earning their own way. I don't know if one email can make any difference to the card's future, but if it can, I hope this contributes in some way. Please continue to do the work. We are constituents of Hinkler and very much support the work you're doing to help people in our area to use their support from the government in the manner it is meant for. With such high numbers of unemployed, whilst having hundreds of backpackers and our farmers saying they're unable to find local people to fill these jobs. Keep up the good work. Everywhere I go, Mr Deputy Speaker, people will raise this issue with me. But what we've seen from those opposite, they said they would consult. I mean, we did over 100 meetings for consultation in my electorate. They went and talked to some activists who don't live in the area. In fact, they're not in the electorate of Hinkler, who are opposed because, well, they're activists, and that's no real surprise. And I'll go, Mr Deputy Speaker, to an editorial from one of the local papers. This is from Jessica Grewal, and it's entitled "Hunting for Villains in All the Wrong Places." From the moment the cashless card debate began, some of the opinions expressed in this space have seen a villain cast in one of the most polarising chapters in the region's history, but much of the contempt expressed on social media and at forums appears to be fuelled by completely false assumptions. This is an editor and journalist. Commenters routinely sought from politicians, members of the public, anti-card lobbyists who are also encouraged to direct their members to the media, but are yet to produce any proof that more than a handful of locals have had any issues accessing necessities or paying rent. Now, this was brought to journalists over and over and over. This is the answer from an independent editor. An independent editor. There was no evidence that that was happening whatsoever. They put it in the local paper. And, Mr Deputy Speaker, in the last few seconds that I have to talk about this issue, I want to come back to one of our local police officers who's now moved on, unfortunately. When it was brought forward, this proposition that this would have an impact on crime, well, here's what he said. Top cop backs cashless card and has a message for criminals. We will come for you. And this has not been the case whatsoever, Mr Deputy Speaker. This is wrong. The decision that Labor is making is wrong. It has been supported in the communities where the rollout has occurred because they know that it works, and they will replace it, the Labor Party, with absolutely nothing.